afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for What's New in Summer 2020 for Construction Online. I'm Holly Gibson, Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies, and today I'm joined by my colleague Jordan Davis, also Senior Product Specialist here at UDA.
Hello, everyone.
And we're so excited you could join us today. We'll be covering all sorts of wonderful enhancements that our team has been hard at work implementing for you guys and thousands of other feature requests that we've received from our users. And so we're always really excited to share with you the enhancements and new features and tools available to you in Construction Online. Now, if you're new to Construction Online or to UDA Technologies, Construction Online is our award-winning project management software entirely on the web. It's used by over 650,000 construction professionals all over the world, managing $80 billion plus in projects every single day. And with that many users, one thing that we do get is of course feedback and tons of interaction. Both Jordan and I are lucky enough to get to work with so many of you guys on a regular basis. And we're always on the lookout really for new ideas, new things that we can add into Construction Online to enhance your experience there. So part of what we'll be covering today will be what we've implemented for summer 2020. So we'll be looking at things like improved file sharing, checklist imports, lead messages, and more. There's so much to cover today. We really can't wait to jump in. Now, when you look at improved file sharing, we've added the ability for you to share your files with any email address or generate a shareable link. So you'll have a cool share link that you can generate and just send out to people, allowing them to go ahead and download the file. Imports for checklist and punch list. We have an Excel template we'll be able to share with you that you can quickly create those lists and then upload them into your Construction Online account. Lead messaging. So all of your lead conversations are now collected via email and stored in your Construction Online account right on your lead timeline. We'll be looking at selection taxes. So you'll be able to actually apply taxes to your selection choices and then see a detailed price breakdown both from your side and from the client side on how those taxes impact the amounts for your selections. And finally, we'll take a look at the brand new custom text for your proposals and reports, which will allow you to create custom text blocks that would detail things like your terms, conditions, requirements that you may want to have appear on these documents. So that's just a sneak peek of what we'll be covering today, along with a handful of other new features. We're really excited to jump in.
That's right, but before we jump in, direct your attention to the GoToWebinar panel, where you'll find a section titled Questions. Now, Holly and I are going to be covering a number of new enhancements and changes today. And if you have questions about how these new features will work or how these enhancements to existing features work or will work for you, send the questions our way. We'd love to make this an interactive webinar. You know, us just throwing out new features left and right is all fun and games, but really the key here is that we want to make sure that our updates make sense for you and are really helping to improve your business's productivity and really your profitability, because the bottom line is really what it's all about. So as we move throughout today, we'll be keeping an eye on the questions panel. We'll spend some time at the end of the webinar today to answer those questions. So send them our way. We'd love to take a crack at them. And without further ado, let's get started.
Let's jump in. So we want to start today with the enhancements for file sharing. So that's where we're going to get started. Now, to do that, we're just going to move into one of my projects, although this is going to work throughout Construction Online wherever you have files stored. So you can certainly, go to your company files, your own personal files. We're going to go into a project. We've got lots of files and documents that we've stored here that we may want to share out with others. And we have made some improvements to how you can actually share those files. So we'll go ahead and head to our file section for our 71st Street project here and just walk you through that share process. So to access this new enhancement, you really don't have to do anything different at first. You're just going to select the folder or the file that you want to share. In this case, maybe I want to share out this safety folder. I'm going to right click on the folder, choose the share option, And we'll notice now that we have a couple of new options within this share sequence here. So we're going to look at the first one here first. That's going to be email or share link. So we'll go ahead and select that. And what this is going to do is give me two options. The first one is I can go ahead and just type in anyone's email address here to share out with someone. So if we choose this option, as we, kind of put in our recipient, I'll be able to, let's see, we'll go ahead and type that in. As we go ahead and put in our recipient, you'll notice that I have a new option now to go ahead and add this contact or just add this item. So if I just want to send it to this person one time, don't necessarily need to add them to my contacts list, I can choose that first option. The second option is going to allow me to just add them right into my ConstructionOnline contacts list so I can use it later. And if we choose this, it's just going to go ahead and send an email directly to that person with the selected either documents or folder. In this case, since I've chosen a folder, it's going to send a zip file, which they'll then be able to access right from their email.
Yeah, now the really big advantage here is that traditional email clients have a file size limit that you can send, and it's very restrictive. I mean, we're talking probably an upper threshold of 5 megabytes, which if you're sending text documents, that could fit the bill, but in a lot of cases, and especially now that phones and cameras and other devices have come such a long way, if you're trying to send 2 photos to someone, or you're trying to send an entire photo album, the chance that you'll be able to fit that into an email is slim to none. So really, there's a lot of advantage in being able to not only send a shareable link, through this email field here, but also the next option, which is copying the link. Because you can take that link and use it in a lot of different, really interesting or creative ways. It's a fairly straightforward option, but a lot of people have requested the ability to share a file without interfacing with an email address or having people log into the platform. I can think of a few use cases right off the top of my head. The first would be potentially copying the link down into something like a text message. Of course, we would recommend that you do something more like Envoy Chat. If you were going to send the link out to someone. You can also add that to an email without having to go through the actual send option. There's a lot of different uses here, and the great thing about the link is, well, it's permanent as long as the file isn't deleted or moved to a folder where people don't have permission to access. So it's really flexible and it's extendable.
And it's really easy. A common question that I'll get about file sharing is, does the person necessarily need to log into ConstructionOnline? What if we just need to basically send that to them? And the share link is a great way to do that because all they really have to do is click on the link. It will immediately download the folder or those documents, and they'll have access right away if maybe they haven't gotten set up yet. Now the other option that's new within your file sharing is going to be the ability to share this over to a cloud storage account that you may be linked to. So you guys know that with ConstructionOnline that integrates with your Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. So, all of the sort of file exclusive systems out there, ConstructionOnline does integrate with those. Typically, we're integrating in a way that allows us to really easily pull files from those platforms into ConstructionOnline. Most users will go ahead and migrate away from using those systems when they start using ConstructionOnline, since we're providing file storage for you here. But sometimes maybe you do have a need to send this information to an outside platform, and so this copy to cloud storage option allows us to do that. If I wanted to maybe send this over to like a Google Drive or a Dropbox, I'm going to choose this second option. And if your account is linked up, you'll just browse for the location where you want that file to be copied, and then go ahead and just choose upload to that area, and it will transfer the information over for you.
Yeah, so we do listen. This has been somewhat of a popular request, not nearly as popular as others on the list today, but while we were working on setting up the shareable link and looking at a few different options, it was simple enough for us to take care of. And while, in some cases there might be some type of internal requirement or process that does require you to pull the files back out into, let's say like a company shared storage solution, that's perfectly fine. We can support that. And we did.
Definitely. So you've got some great options there for files. Now, speaking of popular requests, I want to go ahead and move over to project tracking. and talk a little bit about some of the new imports and exports that we've added for both punch list and checklist. So this has definitely been a popular request as well. Many of you have checklists in other formats that you'd like to be able to import into ConstructionOnline, so that you can really take advantage of, of maybe the mobile app and, the signatures and all the things you can do really within ConstructionOnline that you can't do on an Excel sheet. But that's a really nice way to be able to get the information in. And so we've actually added a couple of new options. So in this project, my 71st Street project here, I do have a number of punch list and checklists already created. So one of the new options that you will have is the ability to export that to an Excel file. When you choose this option, it's just going to immediately, in this case, ask if we want to export the issues along with that. I've got items and issues going in here. And then as soon as you make your selection, it's just going to go ahead and immediately download that right to the downloads folder on your computer. So that will happen right away. It's a really nice, quick export. But there's also an option to import in as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The export functions as a great starting point for building or adapting your own checklist. Once you've done that, all you really need to do to import the checklist or the punch list is to simply select, add new. And instead of starting with a brand new checklist, we'll pick the option to export from an Excel file.
Now, you'll notice when we do this that if you're trying to do an import for the first time, you do want to double check and make sure that you're in the right format. If it's a file that you've exported from ConstructionOnline, it will already be, of course, in that correct format for you. But if it's a list that you have elsewhere and maybe you want to format it for importing, there is a couple of options here. You can download templates that will show you exactly how to organize your data so that it imports well. And then once you've got a file ready, really it couldn't be easier. We're just going to choose the file, choose which one we want. I'm going to go with a COVID-19 job site safety list. I know many of you are facing increased requirements on the job site, so it's great to have a checklist for that. So we'll go ahead and choose the file, select import, and it's just going to import it right in.
Yeah, now we can see all the items that we'd set up inside of that Excel sheet are available inside of ConstructionOnline. No need to go through and type out the same items over and over again. This really does speed up the setup process for new checklists. Of course, one of the major advantages here is that once you've pulled the checklist into ConstructionOnline for the first time, you can actually take that checklist and duplicate it and carry it across to other projects or pull it into a project template so that all future projects are using the same checklist. That way you don't have to go through the import process over and over again, even though it only takes half a second.
I think that was so fast I couldn't even count. If you like to structure your checklist in a way that they have issues or maybe sub items, it's going to work the exact same way. So this one was a relatively small checklist, so we've got 18 items that we need to check off, and maybe you need to do this job site safety once a month, or maybe this is something we do at the beginning of, every week or something like that. You may have larger checklists that you need to follow. Same procedure, we're just going to import from an Excel file. And we'll take a look at an example of a bit larger one that has some issues associated as well. So we've got a OSHA general industry inspection checklist, and if you guys sometimes have to deal with those OSHA guidelines, some of this will be really familiar for you, but there are, I think, over 550 items on this checklist. So it's a really big one, but ConstructionOnline does a beautiful job of handling that as well. So it's going to take maybe a bit longer, kind of a couple of seconds longer to pull in, but it will pull in all of those items and issues. And so now that's ready for us. And you can see now that I've got this organized into headings under my items with issues or sub items listed below for additional things that I need to check off on.
Yeah, a couple of items come directly to mind when I'm thinking about where this import would be really helpful. The first, of course, would be standardized checklists for specific industry segments that might have certain requirements that you need to follow that haven't been built out inside of ConstructionOnline. Instead of needing to build that manually, just take the information that you're working with. use the template and import that into your project or projects. The second would be some type of repetitive task that you might need to duplicate or run out in a list, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 times in the same checklist. Instead of making the same item over and over again inside of ConstructionOnline, well, Excel has a really great option where you can just fill down in the cells inside of the spreadsheet, and you can use that to really save a lot of time and then import that back into the platform. So there's a number of interesting use cases that really come into play when you're working with this type of export and import function. I'm really excited to see what our clients are going to take away, or really how they're going to use this new import to their advantage.
Yeah, here's an example of what that export looks like. So if we needed to export something out and then go in and maybe make some changes, you can assign things, not only just the name of the item, but things like any notes, due dates, priority, a potential cost impact. So if you wanted to go ahead and assign any of that out as well, you can. There's also the percentage complete. So we have a question that someone's asked about, if we make changes and then re-import. The idea there would be to probably do an export at that time and then make changes so that when you re-import, it is saving things like your percent complete there. So I think that will be something that, I don't know, I love these things that make life a little bit easier and kind of make it easier for you guys to take advantage of some of the really powerful things that ConstructionOnline punch lists and checklists can do in terms of helping keep your company organized, keep your company compliant, all the things that are a little bit of a hassle to worry about day to day, or a little bit less of one with tools like this. Now, let's go ahead and shift gears. We want to now have a chance to look at your selection. So we have made some updates to client selections, including taxes, which is what we really want to focus on, but you'll actually notice some additional changes for selections here as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we are on a streak right now, Holly, in terms of adding tax calculations throughout ConstructionOnline's financial tools. Now, the final piece to cap off the different tax calculation and tax tracking options that we started it's only been a couple of weeks since we hosted the webinar covering the tax tracking items inside of ConstructionOnline in general. We've actually now taken that and extended the tax settings for the project or for your company overall to also now be able to be applied to your selection items.
Yeah, that's right. So you have taxes that you can set for your company that are going to come into things like your estimates, your change orders, and now selections. And one of the really nice things about selections and how they interact with the tax settings is that when you mark something as taxable, you're going to be able to very clearly see that that's been applied. So we've made some updates to the display for your selection choices. So we can see here that for the different range options that I have, we have a cost, which is going to be our cost. I have a markup that I can now see as well. And then I also have a tax. So you're going to be able to really clearly see how that breaks down, how you arrive at that final client price. Now, to apply the selections, it's really easy. You just want to make sure that that item is marked as taxable and that you do have your tax rates set up. So when we're looking at a selection, I'm just going to head to the markup and price area here. And you can see that I have my cost already established. I have a markup applied. And for taxes, you'll now have this new section. So we're just going to choose a tax type. In this case, I've chosen material since this is material, but you do have a service tax type that you can choose, as well as custom tax types. So, mine are set up to be material and service because I'm in the US. If maybe you are in Canada or Australia or somewhere else that has a different tax structure, you can really, our settings will default to that for you. And then you'll be able to actually, kind of make those changes. So like if, for example, I go Canada, then I'm going to get GST, PST, and HST. If we do Australia, then I'm going to get GST. So we try to give you a good framework to get started with using the taxes, but you can always add additional tax types as well if you need to. So a very customizable system that's now available within selections. In addition to that, we've added some other changes to the display for selections, not only giving you more visibility on taxes, but more visibility on things like approval status and especially signatures here as well.
Yeah, that's right. This was actually a fairly common request. People wanted to make sure that clients, one, well, they knew about the digital signature tool, which, from the client side is actually a little difficult to avoid. Whenever they're actually approving selections, they'll be presented with a fairly similar screen to what we're looking at here, minus all the markup and other calculations. They'll see the client price, and as they're approving a choice, or approving whatever item they want, they're going to be shown very clearly, well, this is how much the item costs. If it's something that is higher than the allowance, they're also going to see this overage tag on each of the items as well. So let them know, hey, ahead of time, look, we want to make sure that you know that this item costs more than the allotted budget, and that by approving this, well, you say, yes, I want this, and I accept that I'm going to have to pay more for that item. Now, once they've actually made it to the point where they can sign off on the item, they're actually presented with a digital signature box, both on the web client and, if they're using the mobile app, on the mobile phone as well. So there's really a lot of visibility from the client side, but we were finding that from the contractor's side, that sometimes it was a question of whether or not the client had actually digitally signed for the item. We know how important that is. We especially know how important visibility on these items are, especially as a job starts to wind to a close. So we wanted to make sure that you could see what your client had signed, or let's say they just clicked in the box because it's possible they didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they didn't actually want to sign for it. You can now see that, get back in touch with the client and say, hey, this isn't really going to cut it. We actually need a signature.
Right. It's just great to have visibility on those so we can clearly see who signed, the date that happened. And Jordan, like you mentioned, that overage is really clear. So we want to do everything we can to help you guys get paid for your project. So it's nice to be able to display here really clearly, yes, we are approving a $19 overage, or maybe we're approving a $1,900 overage. Either way, we want to be clear about that in terms of what the client is seeing. Now, common question on the taxes, and one thing that I'd like to show a little bit here is that when we're looking at the settings for those taxes, you do have a couple of options in terms of calculation. So mine is set to do a tax calculation first, then markup. You could choose to do a markup first and then tax. So depending on your requirements locally, you may be required to collect taxes or pay taxes on your markup in addition to the actual material or service. So if that's the case, you have the option to have ConstructionOnline calculate that way, or you could choose to do separate calculations against the base cost for both taxes and markup, and then just total those two together. And then depending on what you choose here is going to impact, how that is displayed on the card, so that you're able to see really clearly, okay, in my case, we are starting with this cost, we are applying a tax, then we are applying a markup, so we can see that flow really clearly here.
Yeah, some really great things about the tax settings are that, well, when you set the taxes, when you're putting the estimate together, for instance, those same tax settings are consistent and carried through to the selections and later on to change orders as well. For some of our clients, they don't really need to worry about tax, in the exception of things like selections. For when we're dealing with FF&E type items, well, this now gives you the flexibility to actually account for that additional cost without needing to bend or kind of twist your estimate around a bit, just to make sure that the cost is being, properly accounted for.
Now, speaking of properly accounting for cost, one of the things that happens when you are, of course, putting together the financials for a project is that we want to also be able to create reports, things like proposals, change order documents, subcontractor agreements, all sorts of things that we need to get out to different parties on the project. And so one thing I'm really excited to show you today is some new options we have for customizing those for your company. That's also been a pretty popular request. Most of you guys have contract language that you like to use, and kind of have those as separate documents, and so we wanted to give you a way to really be able to pull those together. So we've created a new custom text block feature that's going to allow you to set things like your requirements, general conditions, terms, subcontracts, whatever type of language you need to have come onto these documents. You're going to be able to get it there very easily.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I don't think that we can emphasize enough how popular of a request this was. Now, for quite a long time, you've been able to edit documents inside of Construction Online. Now, that includes PDFs you might upload, that includes any reports or other documents you might generate inside of Construction Online. But, we wanted to take this a step further and make this a little easier for you and your team to not only set up, but also consistently maintain moving forward. And so what we've done is we've added in this new feature inside of reports, starting in financial reports, called the custom text function. Now these act as almost like snippets or saved default text blocks that are really simple to set up. We're going to take a look first at kind of how they would appear once your team or once you've actually gone through and moved across some of the different contract language. Once you open up one of the reports that supports this new text block function, you'll see there's a new tab titled Default Text. Now for administrators and such, you'll notice there's a button to manage default text blocks, and this is really where the magic happens. This is where you can start to build out the custom text items that will be flowing into your contracts, proposals, purchase orders, and the like. It really makes the report system a lot more flexible inside of Construction Online and really fulfills a number of different purposes, the first of which is supercharging our proposals to actually become true contract documents.
That's right. So you can see how easy it is to set those up. When I'm managing those text blocks, I can actually add as many as I need to my library. And this means that it's going to be available for, all of your team members who are generating these documents to be able to insert this into things like proposals, quote requests, purchase orders, you name it. So there's a number of areas where these appear. Now that I have that set up, I'm actually generating a proposal now. So if we're creating a proposal, you'll notice I have two options. I can include text, upper default text and or lower default text. Now you can include one or both of those. And really what these just determine is the position of this text on your document. So if you choose upper, it's going to appear above the information coming in from Construction Online. So for example, with a proposal, if we insert above, it's going to come above the estimate information. If we choose lower, it's going to come below, or we could have it do both. So maybe we want to do in the upper some general conditions, and then maybe in lower, I want to do the terms and conditions. We can do one or the other. Either way, we'll go ahead and come back to our details here. Just make sure everything kind of looks good in terms of how we want this displayed. Maybe we want to prorate this, and then we'll go ahead and generate our proposal. And what you'll see is that it will just take those blocks of text and go ahead and drop those right onto the proposal for us. So here we have our general conditions appearing at the top. And then we will have our estimate information here. So I've chosen to pull in some estimate information, kind of a summary of what we're going to be doing on this project. And then it will also pull in those additional terms and conditions that I added to the lower block here at the bottom. And these are going to appear below the financial information, but above your signature lines. And we're done. So we've really created a full-on contract really easily. I've actually copied and pasted contract language from a number of the document templates that I had, just kind of saved from contract packages here at UDA. So we've got a lot of the content that you can use if you have those documents or if you have your own. But it's really, really easy to get these in. And the flexibility of the text block system means that you can have, if you have a different set of terms, perhaps for, different types of projects that you work on, or maybe different contract types that you might do, you can go ahead and save all of those together and then just insert the appropriate one when you're creating a new proposal, or maybe something like a new purchase order. So you'll notice this in a number of the financial reports. So I've got a purchase order document here. I can go ahead and choose some default text. Maybe I want to do maybe I don't want to do anything on top, but I want to do like a subcontractor agreement on the bottom. So we'll include that. So there's all sorts of ways that you can use this to really beef up your documents and reports in Construction Online.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is going to save a lot of people time because it's really going to fill that space that people were already filling by taking and either appending the report output to a PDF or trying to copy and paste into the platform in some other way. Being able to save that information and reuse it over and over again really is kind of a staple of Construction Online, and I'm really excited that this is now available for really all of our clients to jump in and start using.
Definitely. So now that we've gone through a couple of examples there, we do want to come back and take a look at some of the new enhancements that we've added outside of your projects, but inside your sales management tools. So most of what we've looked at so far has really been focused on some of the project management. So managing your documents, managing your taxes, managing things like your punch list and checklist. But we want to take a step back and look in your sales management tools because we've actually made some fantastic enhancements to the lead tracking timeline as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, first, the lead tracking timeline itself has been a huge improvement to the lead pipeline and lead management tools inside of Construction Online. Now, if you're wondering, well, okay, what is a lead timeline? What does that mean? What we've done is we've built in a system that gathers all the information together for a specific lead or a specific person and then displays all of that information for you in a nice chronological timeline so you can actually keep up with, well, what all have we done so far in working with this person? What do we need to know about them to really make sure we have a successful business partnership with them moving forward? And really, what is the next up? What are we waiting on for this person to find out? Well, are we going to do business with them? Are we going to land a contract? And to that end, in addition to taking a lot of the lead information and putting it into a much easier to interpret view, we've been expanding outwards, or we've been adding in different components, in a lot of cases now, things like information about the lead, which is easily adjustable here on the page. But the biggest enhancement that we have to show off today is the addition of messages. Now, this has been a very, very popular request. I know, coming from a sales background myself, how important it is to keep up with communications with potential new clients. And looking inside of Construction Online, all the tools were here to actually message leads, but you had to go out of the lead details themselves to actually send messages. Well, no more. I'm so happy that I can say that you don't have to leave the lead record to actually send them a message, and there's a lot of potential benefits built right into being able to send a message directly from Construction Online. The first is ease of tracking, right? This is going to give information to pretty much everyone on the team about this lead, about this person, both before and potentially after they transitioned into becoming a client of yours. Without needing to go back into your own email inbox to track down the information, and also without forcing you to leave the platform to access reference materials.
That's right. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy the most about messages in Construction Online in general, and in particular when I'm thinking about working with leads, is the fact that those responses are captured. So if we send a message to our lead, not only is the message we send going to show up right on their timeline, but any responses that they send back are going to show up here as well. So Jordan, that visibility that you mentioned, that's so important, and being able to see exactly what just happened recently and what needs to happen next, having these messages appear there, and the responses that we're getting from our clients or potential clients really is a game changer. So you're able to see that information all in line, and of course have some visibility for other tools as well within that lead timeline also. Now, you'll notice if I choose go to conversation, it's actually going to take me over to the messages tab for this lead. So if I want to see a full history of a particular conversation altogether, then I can do that right here. And I also have visibility for things like, attachments that I've added. In this case, there aren't any for this lead, but we'll take a look at a couple of other contacts here. But there's so much information for you to work with on the lead timeline.
Yeah, and that's right. And of course, when we're looking inside of messages, to support a lot of the outreach that we know our clients will need, one of the things we built in to really make to really supercharge the messages function for leads in particular, but really throughout the entire platform in general, is the ability now for you to add in your own message signature. You can see Holly's message signature here. She's not having to go in and type this every single time. No, we've actually built this message signature function into your ConstructionOnline profile. So if you were to take a look inside of the top right company settings menu, you'll find a place where you can edit your profile. And in here, you'll find a new option to edit message signatures. Now, this is going to apply to any messages that you send out of ConstructionOnline, which is incredibly helpful. It can save you a ton of time. And of course, it really adds that professional zeal on top of your messages.
That's right. One of the things that you notice in my signature is that it does support things like links or formatting really of the text. So you still have, just like with a regular email client, you have the ability to really personalize it, not only with the information, but colors and things like that reflect, your company's branding. So you can make some customizations there. And then once that's done, it will just go ahead and appear on any message that you send from ConstructionOnline. So one less thing for you to have to do or worry about there.
Yeah, that's right. And we know that that's especially important for sales reps and sales teams to make sure that they're constantly staying front of mind for potential new clients.
Definitely so. Now, we've also added for leads, some additional options like export of the lead. Pipeline itself now includes, some additional information. There's a brand new lead notes feature that was added a couple of months back. So the CRM sales management portion of ConstructionOnline has really seen a lot of cool new features, cool and useful. So many wonderful things that you can do. And we've heard great feedback from you guys on how many of you are really diving in and taking advantage of some of these new tools to really supercharge your sales process.
That's right. In fact, we've heard so much positive feedback about the lead timeline that we're actually going to be building a very similar view for all contacts inside of ConstructionOnline, not just leads. So if you're really excited and you really enjoy seeing all the different information about a specific person inside of the lead tracking place, but you thought to yourself, oh, well, I wish I could see this for my suppliers, or I wish I could see a timeline for my subcontractors so I can drill down and see what all has happened there as well. Well, don't worry, we are actively working on that right now, and that's going to be coming to ConstructionOnline very soon.
That's right. Now, before we dive into questions, and definitely keep them coming, we can't wait to jump into those. And if you have ones that you'd like to ask, definitely go ahead and submit those. But before we jump into questions, I did want to run down a few additional features that weren't really advertised for this webinar today. But when we were looking at putting together a roundup of some of the most impactful new features of the summer, it was very hard to narrow it down. So there's probably, a good 5 or 10 more that I think are also really impactful. Of course, we don't have time to cover all of them in detail, but I did want to touch on some of them. So a couple of the things that I think are really worth mentioning as we wrap up the roundup, I guess you'd say. One is there has also been an export functionality added to your change orders. So as we've gone through and looked at things like Excel exports for leads and for your checklist and for your punch list, we did go ahead and add that into your change orders as well. So if you need to come in and export out a report that shows all of the change orders and includes a ton of information, the Excel export is great for that.
Yeah, that's right. We were trying to meet the needs in a couple of different reports for change orders, and then we realized, okay, wait, there are some people out there who are wonderful, right? They're the data analysts and the number crunchers of the world, and we want to make sure that we give them the information that they're looking for without really putting them through too many hoops. And what we came to realize, I think, was, they're never going to be satisfied with just a report. They want all the data all at once so they can go and do what they're best at, and that is crunching the numbers. So we made it really easy to take the information that's beautifully presented in ConstructionOnline and it outputs directly into a data table so they can get to work.
That's right. Now there's a couple of other things that we've added throughout ConstructionOnline to just make things easier, get more information in front of you. One area where we've done that as well is on your calendars and schedules. So you will notice on your project calendars now, Some additional options when you click on those items. So especially if we're looking at, like, for example, a change order, it's actually going to bring up more information on the change order, give you links to go ahead and jump over to the change orders for that project. And this is especially useful, in my opinion, when you're in the company overview, because you might be working with or managing multiple jobs at the same time. And so having more information in front of you on the calendar where we have everything in one place can be really nice, because it also serves as a quick link to just jump over to that section. So if I'm having a weekly meeting for this project, I can view the details here. I can see what's happening with this to-do deadline that I've got, and even actually go to the to-dos for that project all right from the calendar. So to me, it's a great place where you can bring together a ton of information, kind of everything in one place. But some of the enhancements really make it easier to then use that as a springboard to go out to the rest of your information.
That's right. Now, speaking of going out into the right place, something that we've added to all projects in ConstructionOnline is now the ability to add in job site instructions. Now, this is a pretty popular request, especially for those of you who are working with subcontractors, and you wanted an easy way to tell subcontractors things like, well, if it's, if the property is in a gated area, in a gated community or something like that, you can give the gate code. If there's specific parking instructions that your team or subcontractors need to follow, you can add that information here as well. If the job site is a little tough to find, maybe it's behind a couple of different high-rises or something like that, and they're trying to make their way through, you can use this field in a number of different ways to really supercharge the information that sends out to subcontractors and really sets the tone of the project right from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right. So when you think about where the job site instructions will show up, they actually will appear on the invitation that goes out when you invite your subcontractors or trade partners or other TeamLink members to the project. So the email that they receive with the invitation will also include those job site instructions, which is really nice for going ahead and not only recording that information yourself, but just making sure that it gets communicated out, really quickly as well. The job site instructions are also going to display within the TeamLink portal. So here's an example of what that looks like. So we're looking at, kind of the same project here, but only from a subcontractor perspective here. And those job site instructions appear front and center when they log into their portal. So they're able to access those really easily. A couple of other things while we're looking at projects that I think is wonderful to check on. One thing that we also added is the ability to have project channels. So when you're thinking about Envoy chat and the communication tools that are available in ConstructionOnline, one thing that we did is go ahead and add in channels for your projects. So here's an example. I haven't created the channel for this job yet, but we're going to just create a channel. This is going to be a dedicated communication zone for my Summit Office Plaza project. And when I create that, all of my team members who are part of this job will automatically be added to this channel. So it really makes setting up those channels of communication really easy and keeps your chats within Envoy chat very much organized around the project and easy to find.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen a lot of adoption with these channels happening over the past couple of months as people have either gone remote or they've reduced the number of people that are in the office or on the job site at any one given time. Being able to keep an instant message channel running on the project for any questions or concerns or comments that might come up throughout the course of the project really is a huge benefit, especially when everyone doesn't have the luxury, when you don't have the luxury of being all at the same place all the time. This really can supercharge your company's communication. Now, I have had this question come up a few times, Holly, and they want to make sure that this chat is internal only. For right now, yes. Project Channels Envoy chat is completely internal to your company employees or company users. Now, is that potentially going to change in the future? Maybe, but for right now, it really serves as a fantastic internal communication tool.
It does. Internal communication, you can communicate freely and really don't have to worry about people outside your company being able to see this line of communication. So this is for your team, and it's all, again, to me, just as easy as text, but way more organized and gives you so much more just so much more in terms of communication around a project. So it's really excited to introduce that.
And yes, you can use the shared links from files in Envoy chat. Really, really nice feature kind of combo there.
Nice feature pairing, definitely so. Now, a couple of other things just to touch on before we wrap up. We've also added options for sharing your daily logs with your ClientLink members. So some of you have asked about the ability to let clients see what was being entered in the daily logging. So if that is you, if you'd like to be able to share that out, that option is now available to you. So you can just turn that on right within the ClientLink portal, and clients will be able to view the daily log entries that are coming in. And we've added a couple of major enhancements to both our QuickBooks integration through Socket and our Takeoff tool as well. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jordan, too?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with Socket, I actually pinned it down here if we want to just give people a quick preview. We've added in a massive update, the application for payment tool. Now, we previewed this back in March earlier this year, but we have definitely now released the application for payment feature, which we know is a critical component for a lot of projects. You know, you're working on a project, there's a very strict process in a lot of cases if you're required to use the AIA forms to apply and receive payments. And we know really what it takes to put together an actual application for payments along with the continuation sheet. If you're doing this by hand, you know the struggle, you know what all is entailed by that, but we've actually built in a system that translates a lot of this information and builds an application for payment for you. All you have to do is build your estimates as you typically would. We've put in some pretty easy processes in place for you to generate invoices. These are going to act as essentially the amounts that you're requesting in the actual application for payment. And the system will move through and handle all of the generation of the application for payment for you. It's going to keep track of your initial starting balance. It's going to track any change orders or credit memos that you might be dealing with throughout the course of the project. And it's going to package it all up. It's going to keep track of your previous amounts billed for you. Really, it does it all. It's a very, very powerful and useful feature. If you are wanting to start using applications for payment, but you want to speak with us potentially or kind of walk through the process, we'd love to help out. Really, really happy that this has been added into Socket. I know how many hours this is going to save across the board, and I can't wait to see, a tally of how many hours you've saved using this tool moving forward.
It's a phenomenal tool. It really is. The last thing I guess to touch on, it's so hard to narrow some of these down, but the last thing to touch on maybe are some of the enhancements that have been added into Redline Takeoff. So for those of you who are already using Takeoff, you know what a fantastic tool it is. We have added a couple of enhancements recently for things like the ability to do cutouts. So if you're measuring shapes like areas and volume, you now have the ability to cut out a section of that to allow you to be pretty precise when you are going in and doing that measuring there. We have also added the ability to set standard scales. So we recommend using a calibration method to kind of get the best and most accurate measurements with Redline Takeoff, but sometimes you don't have known measurements that you can work with, but you do have a known scale, and so we've actually added in predefined standard scales to make it faster and easier to go ahead and get started with your Takeoff.
Yeah, and the list of standard scales that we've added is fairly extensive. I mean, I think we've included over 25 or 30 different scale units and scale measurements and scale ratios, both for architectural scales and for civil scales, which I thought was a very interesting addition. I've worked with a lot of different clients who've been looking at adding or have added the Takeoff tool recently, and this was a fairly popular request because, some draftsmen or some designers or some architects, they might not go the extra mile and actually apply known measurements to the drawing, but I have seen that in almost every case, they'll at least put a scale on the document so you can get a rough idea of the different measurements on the document itself, which, when combined with the standard scale function inside of Takeoff, really supercharges that sheet to allow you to start to do all sorts of unique and interesting things like taking area or volume measurements, or just measuring linears across to make sure that, well, is this an accurate drawing? What I've found most interesting is that when people start using Redline Takeoff, they start to find that some of the line measurements on the page aren't exactly accurate, and it really can help cut down on a number of issues moving forward.
It definitely can. Now, if you would like information about how to use Takeoff or standard scales or the application for payment, or maybe the new file sharing, or some of the tax options, or really anything else that Jordan and I have covered today, we are more than happy to work with you one-on-one. So please do feel free to give us a call at the office anytime here. We're at 800-700-8321. You can also reach us by email or on our website through chat. We're more than happy to work with any of you on how to use some of these new features. We want you to be able to take advantage of that, so please don't hesitate to reach out. In the meantime, it looks like we've got time for a couple of questions before we wrap up. So we have one question that I'll go ahead and, while we're talking about new features, that I'll go ahead and address. Someone wants to know any update on the service module that is coming out for ConstructionOnline. So I can say that there's been continued fantastic progress on the service module. Really excited about that coming down the road. For those of you who have not talked to us about that yet, we are working on a new module for ConstructionOnline designed specifically for handling service calls. So it will be great for those of you who maybe do warranty work and want to track some of those small warranty jobs as a follow-up to projects. It will be great for any of you who have a service division of the company, or sometimes take on really smaller jobs that would be more so like a service call. Or if you take on a lot of those jobs that are really, more like service calls, and you want a way to manage them better. So there's going to be so many great ways to use this new feature. I'm really excited to be able to debut that, later this year for sure.
Someone asked if we're going to be recording the webinar. Yes, absolutely, and it looks like they asked us to send a link out. We will be recording the webinar. If you are here now, you will receive a link to the recording if you wanted to go back and take a look. So keep an eye on your inbox. And the same is true for all of the webinars that we've recorded, actually. All the webinars that we've done in really this past year, and I think for all time, are recorded and available on our website at udatechnologies.com/events.
That's right. Now, someone wants to know, it looks like actually a couple of people want to know, hey, do you have any checklist that you can maybe share with us? So as always, if you would like a copy of the checklist that I have that we've looked at today, I'm more than happy to share. These are just a couple of just OSHA standard checklists that you've probably seen or kind of had distributed to you in a PDF or something like that. So I'm definitely happy to share. If anyone would like a copy of the checklist to import into your account, please feel free to chat that over to us through the question panel now, or I would be happy to you can just send me an email after this and we'll be sure to share that out.
Yeah, and if you're in the US, use the OSHA checklist now so you don't have to use OSHA forms later.
Let's see. I think that just about covers most of the questions that we can answer for everyone. I have noticed a couple of you have asked, about potentially going ahead and working with us one-on-one to cover some additional questions. So again, we'll take your information. Be sure to reach out. Speaking of the events page, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have coming up next week, Jordan, because I am really excited about our upcoming webinar on estimating. So next week on Thursday, August 13th, we will be looking at 5 steps to more accurate financials, really focusing in on cost estimating in ConstructionOnline.
That's right. We get to finally show off not just the how-to of clicking here and looking at this button, but we're really going to dig in and be showing off some best practices and lessons learned that we've picked up along the way from working with thousands and thousands and thousands of different estimators, and those of you out there who are really building a better tomorrow.
That's right. If it's been a while since you worked with estimating in ConstructionOnline, or if you have templates that you use, which we would recommend for sure, but if you have templates that you use, you might have actually missed some of the newest things that have been added in over the last 3 to 6 months. So there's been a lot of new tools come into estimating that you'll be able to take advantage of to get even more accurate with your financials, and we'll be looking at some of those best practices as well. Jordan, like you mentioned earlier, recording of today's webinar and all previous webinars are also available here on the events page. So there are some really wonderful workshops and classes that you can go back and take a look at. But until next time, I think that wraps us up for today. I definitely want to thank everyone again for taking some time out of your afternoon to join us and see all the new things that we've worked on for you this summer. And we hope to see you at our estimating workshop next week.
That's right. Thank you all so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and hopefully we'll be talking to you next Thursday. Until then, take care.